recording.
Some cold water.
Let's start recording the mixer. Everybody quiet. And since y'all can't hear the intro, Drew, we starting with you?
Yes.
Okay. I'll give you the sign when it's time for you to take it away. All right. Start recording the mixer in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the Recovery Lab podcast. We're glad you were able to join us. Recovery Lab hopes to destigmatize addiction and normalize recovery.
Our platform provides an avenue to share the many stories of those that have recovered from addiction, providing for the listener the most basic antidote to addiction: hope.
All right, everybody, we're back. This is episode number 96 of the Recovery Lab
96.
podcast. Yes.
Holy
Drew
moly.
Hassin.
I'm Daniel Anderson.
David Sugg.
We are the Recovery Lab. Well, listen, David, since this is your guest that you scored, you can introduce her.
Absolutely. So Amanda's been a friend. We were hanging out the other night talking about treatment, work in the treatment field, and it was just obvious that she was super passionate about the job and the role she's had in different treatment industries. And I was just really looking forward to getting her on. There's that line in the big book where it talks about, come stand with us for a little while on the firing line and see the despairing lives, see the breaking up of feeling. Let these problems become a part of your daily life and see why we're not, super involved. And I was just thinking that for this week, I hadn't met anybody more passionate about being on the firing lines than Amanda. So I'll let her tell us a little bit more about how she got into that. But I'm really interested to hear just kind of like what it's like to get to yes, to get somebody to come into treatment over the phone. If you've ever done phone sales, it's really tough to you can't pick up the nuance. You can't read the body gestures. You don't know what's going on in the background. You don't know if there's a baby in the scene. You have no idea what's going on. You're just trying to get to yes over the phone.
The Wolf of Wall Street Desperation Edition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, man, has got a lot of experience doing that, doing admissions remotely over the phone, listening to these little things, these little nuances that you just can't pick up on. You've got to have a really deep sense of a really strong listening skill, a really strong sense of empathy to really pick up on that. And as I was talking to her, I could tell that she's really attuned to what's going on in somebody's life rather than just like, what do you want? Let me take your order. Because there's a lot of order takers in this industry. They're just looking for a place to place you. And she was obviously
let me get that insurance money.
That's right. So you want to tell us how you got into it and what you like most about it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Amanda Martin, and I am a professional addict and alcoholic. I've been in the recovery addiction treatment, I guess, that's the broad scope of it. I've been in this industry for about 7 years now. And I never expected to find myself in it. I never expected to be the person that could help other people because I couldn't even help myself. And, I was just really good at fucking some things up. And that was, that was my career for a long, long time. But I kind of stumbled into the job that I had at first, which was a recovery coach. I worked on site at an addiction campus and basically just took role, got people to their therapy offices. But what I was really good at was just sitting down on the floor of the hallway and crying with them and just kind of listening to, they say, I miss my kids right now. It's my son's birthday. It's this, it's that. And, I just realized that I was really good at sitting down and just saying, you know what, I was in treatment. I missed my kid's birthday, and I got offered the role of doing admissions, which was a remote job. It was also the first job that I ever had working over the phone. I had no experience with it. I was a registered nurse in my old life, so I just, it was really new and I fell into it. And somebody told me in the very beginning of that, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. There's no in between. You're going to be good at it or you're going to suck. There's no in between. But the more that I did that, the more that I realized I was going to make it in this because my passion was to help people. And, you're right. There are a lot of order takers. And, once I got my feet wet, I realized there are people who are really good at this. And there are people who are, man, it's not just you're bad at your job. You're messing people up. You are, when that person overdoses and dies tomorrow, your name's going to be on that death certificate somewhere because they reached out for help and, you didn't help them. So I just know that when people call in, my thing has always been compassionate. I was lucky enough to work two different places, two two different companies, and we were both the type of people who listened. We didn't hang up on people. If somebody called in and they said, God, I'm living in a tent, I've got Medicaid, I've got whatever, I know right off the bat, we probably can't help these people. They probably can't come to my facility. But my thing wasn't, let me get off this phone. It was, let me listen. Let me see what they've got going on. And I'm going to get them somewhere. You're going to treatment. And that's what I would always tell them. I can get you some help, even if it's not with me. So
How do they get on the phone with you?
So the biggest way would be people who, when you Google it and you just say, hey, I'm looking for treatment, Google knows where you are. So it gives you a list of places that are within your area. Most addiction treatment facilities will advertise along with Google and kind of put those keywords in there. They're looking for, AA based or this, that, and the other. But people typically, unless they've been there and they're calling to readmit somewhere, when they make that phone call, they have no idea who they're calling. And I would say 75% of the people that I would speak to, which would be a family member or the patient directly, had zero idea. They had no expectation of that phone call. They had no idea what to ask for, how to ask for it, what the process was going to be. And so it would just be, you're like the first person this person talks to. They're in a crisis, and you are going to shape their idea of what it looks like to get help from the very first second that you start talking to them. But yeah, people call in and they're just like, most of them just say, listen, I can't live like this anymore. I've been sleeping outside for 2 weeks now. I haven't had a shower in a month, and my family won't let me come inside. Like, it's that bad. My family is just like, if you freeze to death, you freeze to death. Like, you can't stay here anymore. And I don't know what to do about it. I very rarely have anybody call in and say, I need treatment. They always call in and they say, I need help. So that was my job, to listen and see exactly what it is that they need, what it is that they're looking for. And then we look into what are your resources for getting there. And then I get them there. That's kind of my job.
What is your geographical range?
I mean, all across the country. The two addiction centers that I worked for physically located in Mississippi.
Okay.
Now, I did work for the other company, the first company. We had some other facilities spread throughout the U.S., but most of them that call from Mississippi end up going to a Mississippi facility. A lot of insurances they don't have out-of-state benefits, or they don't have, this, that, and the other for whatever reason. So that's another big part of my job, is hearing, like, being able to kind of look at what their resources are personally, and just finding the best solution for them. I personally believe you need to get as far away from home as you can. The further away you are from your plan B, C, and D, the better chance that you have, because it's really easy to back out, and you're going to have those panic moments.
I completely agree. I call it getting out of my epicenter of poor choices. Because you're going to want to get high, and you're going to want to call old boy. But if you're 4 hours from him, this ain't DoorDash.
Yeah, I had to get out of Hattiesburg. It was like there was nothing good there for me. And I came to Jackson, and Jackson's really not any better, but I didn't know anybody.
Right.
I didn't know where all the dirt was. It was just good for me to get out of there. There's a book, an author, speaker in my professional world, Chris Voss, and he's an expert negotiator. He's written a book called Never Split the Difference. But it's just about how do you unwind these really difficult situations? How do you become an expert at negotiating? How he got started, though, he couldn't really get a job with anybody. He couldn't get a job. He wanted to get a job with the FBI. Couldn't get a job, so he went to a suicide hotline to get practice, because what could be a more tense, more high-stakes game than learning how to negotiate over the phone, than talking to people who are calling suicide hotlines. And when you and I were talking the other night, I was thinking about kind of that. You're the first person that these people have talked to, and they're reaching out in their moment of their darkest, deepest despair. And like how we handle that thing, and Chris Voss has a thing called tactical empathy, like really trying to understand where they are, what's going on, listening for reframing things, and trying to get them to some sort of a yes without being pushy, but really find out what is. So you mentioned something about, it's not a fit, but you also know that they need help. What is your web of, the security? Like, how do you have a list of other places? Do you network with other treatment centers, treatment providers? Because you got to be pretty quick to know, like, hey, this isn't going to fit for us, but or do you just tell them to hold on? Because they might not be able to hold on. What's your plan? What do you do there whenever somebody's calling you know it's not a good fit?
Yeah, for sure. Both of the places that I worked for had a really, organized, a really big business development team. And I come to find out that that is one of the most valuable resources that they can have at their fingertips. So, basically we have a business development rep that works in each, territory. They split it up however it is, throughout the state of Mississippi. But they've told me, hey, I'm from Tupelo. I've got Mississippi Medicaid. I've got a list of places. I know some places. Yes, I keep a huge list of numbers, contacts at that specific place or whatever. But if that person has an insurance that just doesn't work with us, or just for whatever reason we can't take it, or maybe they're a readmit and it's just it hasn't been long enough since the last time they were with us for whatever the reason may be, I can absolutely reach out, and that would be our protocol, to reach out to the business development rep in that area and let them refer it out, because that's kind of what they do. They network. They have a working relationship with, hospitals, doctors' offices. They go around to any place that a person, an addict or alcoholic, may go that would need help. Emergency rooms, the case management team at other hospitals, just whatever that may be. Homeless shelters, whatever. So they know the people in the business. If they're a good business development rep, they know all the places that a person could be referred to. And then in turn, when that facility gets the same phone call and they're not able to help them, they're like, hey, I know Richard, this would be a great place for you to go. But yeah, as far as people who maybe they don't have any insurance or they don't have whatever, our business development reps are able to kind of speak with them and tell them, hey, this is how you get insurance. We're not allowed as the treatment facility to coach them and say, hey, you should go to Marketplace and you should get this insurance, because that's not an ethical approach. But I can kind of direct them. And what I would say is, I would look into getting insurance, because that's going to help you no matter where you go, period. It's going to open the door to a million more resources. But there definitely are programs out there that are state funded, that there are grants available if you have no insurance, if you have low income, or for whatever reason. Medicare and Medicaid is really picky. There are lots of resources out there, but you've got to be in network with them. And there are way less places that are in network with Medicare and Medicaid specifically. So there's a lot of little things you got to be quick on your feet to kind of hear these different things, what the person is needing, where they are they on probation? They might be restricted to a certain area. What do they have going on? Do they have an upcoming court date? They tell me, hey, I just got a DUI last week. Okay, when's your court date? We have to kind of look for, there's a lot of, when I say looking for the best option for that person, there's a lot of things that go into that, a lot of different factors. So
yeah, there's that line in the doctor's opinion where it says, these problems pile up on them and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. And just like trying to get this coat hanger box untangled and find a place for them to go, it's just like, it's unmanageability. It's called that for a reason, because this is unmanageable.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to something I wanted to ask you about. So this has to be, talking with people day in and day out, it has to be, to a certain extent, pretty taxing on you. And we're not diving into victim mentality in any way, shape, or form. My goal in asking this question is to just get insight and see how you handle these situations. So talking with these people on a day in, day out basis, how do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of your own mental health when you're hearing all of these other people's problems? Does it make you grateful for where you are in the journey that you've had? Or is it more of kind of a, boy, this is exhausting, I need to take some time for myself? What does that look like for you specifically?
man, that's a big, big deal. I've learned in this line of work. The burnout for people who do this type of work, it's a crash and burn situation. And it's hard to draw that line because a lot of us, most of us, the people that are in, I'm in recovery, and people who are in recovery that work in this field, we know exactly what it looks like when you overextend yourself. But at the same time, when you get into like AA and you get into these programs, it's like learn how to be a productive human being and go to work. And it's like I've built my life on being responsible and dependable and all this kind of stuff. And so most addicts and alcoholics that I know tend to be those black and white people. It's all or nothing. It's, I'm all in or I'm all out. So it is kind of difficult to separate, like, when I am overdoing it versus, when am I just not being an asshole and pulling out and giving up and, and all that. But when I first started working in this field of work, somebody told me, do not let this job become your recovery program, because I promise you, and I didn't
Wise.
know what that meant at first, but it did. Like, I got to a point where at the end of the day, I didn't have the energy to go to a meeting because I just spent 8 hours listening to people who were either, that might be dead tomorrow, listening to this mother cry and, I've already lost 3 of my children, and this is, it's emotionally taxing. It really is. If you're doing a good job, if you're good
Right.
at it, because if you're here and you're just taking those orders and you're just kind of, looking for how can I make some money off the situation or how can I get the most admissions this month, you're not a good admission specialist. But if you do pour your heart into it, it can bleed you out. So that is a thing. People either make it and they do really well, or they crash. It's another black and white thing, or they crash them and they can't do this job. I would say learning yourself, learning how to recognize when it's a time when, like, I need a 3-day weekend, I need to take a little bit of time back, or when it's a time of, I'm pulling back and getting into my selfish bullshit and I just need some extra meetings or I need to call somebody. That's some of the biggest things, because it is, you just can't do this job and do it well without getting emotionally involved, I guess. I mean,
Right.
you just can't do it.
How do you practice that balance?
Balance for me is having friends at work, people who work for me, they work for the same company. We can bitch and complain. And that's kind of a general thing. That's just kind of the rule. I've got to have somebody to blow steam off with. You mentioned earlier about like a suicide hotline, and that's what we are a lot of times. That's what we are a lot of times. People call in and, especially veterans. Veterans call in and they're like, I've got a pill bottle in one hand and I've got a pistol in the other. And, but I'm like, but you didn't take the pills and you didn't pull the trigger. You dialed the numbers on the phone. So
Right.
just give me a chance to talk to you. But at the end of those, and I have had calls where they did it on the phone. I've heard guns go off, Um, and so it's about taking that time at the end of that call to give it the respect that it deserves, that this is a horrible thing, and stepping back and being able to say, I need a minute, or I need the rest of the day, or whatever it may be, because every person that calls in deserves 100% of my attention. And if I can't give that to them, it's worse, than picking up the phone. Not picking up the phone at all is better than picking up the phone and giving somebody 50% of your time and your care.
Wow.
That's got to be tough.
Very tough.
So what do you think the success rate is? I know that every administration, every admin person's probably got different numbers, but what were your numbers as far as getting somebody in versus getting hang-ups, or what's your success rate like converting calls?
Well, it's different. The metrics, the way that they measure success is probably different from company to company. The first company I worked for, they wanted to know the leads. Like, how many people, when you call in, if it has anything to do with mental health or, addiction, we create a lead in our system. Whether that ends up being a refer out or somebody we didn't help or somebody we admitted or whatever it may be, that's a lead. So they look at those and they want you to have at least a 20% conversion rate. So that's considered to be good. So if I open 100 leads that month, if 20 of them admitted, that's considered successful there. The last company I worked for didn't look at the numbers so much as like how many people that you technically converted to being a lead. But I had a higher success rate with that because I just, being in that mind frame, I would look. And the last time that I looked, I had over a 70% conversion rate with that company. I do think that being a nurse in my old life is a huge advantage to me, because when someone says I have cirrhosis, I know the questions to ask with that, because that sounds bad. Cirrhosis can be like, hey, it's never going to affect you in your life. Or cirrhosis can mean this person is yellow. This person is this person's going to die in 2 weeks. There's different levels of care. Some facilities are more medical based, and so they're able to take care of the medical needs. Some facilities are more based off of like the medication. It just depends on what they're equipped to deal with. But having that medical experience when someone's, one of our questions is always the 3 S's, seizures is one of them. That's a big one. Have you ever had a seizure, especially in relation to detoxing or coming off of whatever? But if you just mark that looks pretty bad. But I know to ask, when was that seizure? Who witnessed it? My friend did. They just said, I don't know. I just passed out. I woke up and I'd wet my pants. Well, that may not have been a seizure, So when you ask those kinds of questions, the people who are making the decision on whether this person's appropriate to come to our facility, they have a full picture. And I do think that is one of the reasons that I had a big conversion rate like that, because I dug in and I asked the questions that, gave the people who made those decisions enough information to make a better call. Because I've definitely seen people that didn't get in that definitely should have. And, there's a lot of places. One of the things with the state funded places that do offer the grants for mental health and opiate abuse and things like that, one of the biggest disadvantages of those is those long wait lists. 6 weeks is a long time. 4 weeks. 1 week is a long time. When
1
you're at the
day
end
is
of
a
your
long
rope.
time.
Yeah.
When you're at the end of your rope, man. And so it's, when I refer those people out, I still don't know if they made it. I still don't know.
Do all the people that call, what is the breakdown in percentage between purely addiction or some, I mean, I know that there's crossover and gray area and all that, but there's a difference between somebody with schizophrenia and somebody that's on heroin.
Well, I can tell you, as far as like people who just called the wrong number, or they thought they were calling a physical therapy, physical rehab places, that's pretty small. But I would say it's probably only about, maybe like, this is just me guessing, but maybe like 10% of people that call in that are just strictly alcoholism or addiction. Mental health is the underlying problem. And that's one of the things that I don't think enough people understand, is that drugs and alcohol are not what's wrong with you. They're a symptom of what's wrong with you.
Bingo.
Most people are dealing with what the underlying problem is, that unresolved trauma, unresolved grief, unresolved whatever, and untreated mental health problems. So not every person who has a mental health diagnosis is an addict or alcoholic, but most addicts and alcoholics have an underlying mental health problem. That's been my experience.
What are the criteria that you have to look for?
The criteria that we looked for at the places that I worked, we were dual diagnosis based. Now, there's a spectrum I've seen. If you go to a place that is strictly mental health, that's the kind of place that you go into and they lock the doors and they take your shoelaces and you can't leave until a doctor signs you out, right? Then there's places you can go on the other side of that spectrum where are just for substance abuse and alcoholism. Those are places that, like, hey, we can't help you with your depression. We can't help you with whatever. We're just here to detox you, or we're just here to whatever. Those dual diagnosis places meet in the center. And to me, that's the best of both worlds, basically. Because you go in there and it's like, hey, we're going to detox you. We're going to deal with this. We're going to get you safely off the alcohol. But then we're going to get to work and get to business on what was really the problem. I think if you go in, I never recommend detox only. I never recommend that. That is ridiculous. I don't know what the statistics on that are, but, I just always tell people, most people who go in for detox only, you just end up going back 3 or 4 or 5 times that year. So by the time you've been 3 or 4 times that year, you could have just done 30 days and actually gotten a little bit of the problem fixed. It's, yeah, I think that most people definitely end up needing that mental health treatment. And so that would be my recommendation, my way to go. Some people, you may not have depression, you may not have anxiety, you may not have whatever, but most of us have some type of grief, some type of trauma, something we've been through. And a lot of people, astonishingly, a lot of people do not realize, they don't make that correlation. They have no idea that has anything to do with their drinking. Nothing. It's wild. Never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, excuse me. I try to have compassion for those people, and I try to remember that, I was holding on to, I was willing to give up the meth, no problem. I'm willing to give up the alcohol, no problem. I know the alcohol is bad for me. I know these other drugs are bad for me, but I was still holding on to the idea that, well, pot is an earthly product. Like, it's God created pot. How can I possibly live without marijuana? So I had all of the knowledge. My first meeting was when I was 18, and I'm just now about to come up on 4 years. So there was a long period of time where I was holding on to this. I can just smoke weed, as well as like I don't have any mental health problems. I just like the way that weed helps me. So I was holding on to these mental thoughts, this mental, that, well, the drugs and alcohol, they're not a symptom. That, the drugs and alcohol may be an issue, but this pot thing, it's not a problem for me. And it wasn't until I let go of that, oh shit, pot is also never going to be a solution for me, that I was able to start to make decent process, working towards the actual solution, which was in here and in here, not pot, meth, alcohol. So I'm right there with you when you talk about that. I mean, it took me many years to really accept that the problem was not the drugs and alcohol. In fact, the drugs and alcohol, they were my solution for a very, very long time, until they stopped being the solution. And then I was left with this thing on my back, and I didn't know how to handle life on life's terms. So it's very, very important that we recognize that the drugs and alcohol are just a symptom of the problem. And the real solution for me didn't begin until I was separated from those things, which leads me to exactly what you do. You give the knowledge from your own personal experience that you're able to tap into. You give men and women the knowledge necessary to kind of begin that conversation of, okay, there is a solution out there. I don't know exactly how to get to that solution, but I know that there's this person that's willing to talk with me. So kudos to you for, putting up with the good and the bad in order to stay consistent at your job, and not let your own personal, whatever you have in your life affect how you're able to help other people. So you're genuinely saving lives. Like, it's not a job of what you do. You're in the healing process, the healing business. You're not in the, oh, let's just find you a treatment facility and I'll check it off the box. Like, no, you genuinely care, and you're able to tap into that past experience through your own past life and your new life now. So I'm grateful to you for doing the hard work necessary to.
Do you get to follow up with people like, man, I sure hope Sarah makes it, or Mike really, I feel for Mike. Well, how's Mike doing?
Or can you even?
Do you get any idea of how it works out?
So the first facility I worked for, I did a lot of work with the alumni program.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved it. A lot of times I would go down to campus, even after I worked in the admission center, I would go down to campus and walk in, and I'd start telling my story, and they were, somebody would inevitably stop me and say, "Are you Amanda from the call center?"
Yeah.
How did that make you feel when that happened?
Oh my God. I
Right?
just would bawl like a baby.
Yeah.
And I remember this one guy, he had called in, he was actually a veteran, and those can be, man, whew. He had, he was just like, man, no, fuck this, and I hate this, and blah, 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 and I have to come there, and whatever. And I said, listen, you're on the phone with me right now, so obviously there's a problem. I don't care how you get here. I don't care if somebody ordered you to come, whatever. I just need you to get here. Fine, I'm going to come in. I'm going to detox only. So it was about 3 or 4 weeks after that, I went down, I was telling my story, and this guy who was sitting right down in the front with his notebook and his pencil and
He was taking notes, huh?
he was right in the front of the room. And yeah, when I got to the end of this thing, he walks up to me and he's like, "I'm Jason." And he said, "I just want you to know that you saved my life." And he said, he's like, "I'm going to Next Step." It was our IOP program. He was, this guy came in, he's like, "I'm going to do 10 days. And he ended up being there for 6 months. That's the biggest thing that you can do to remind yourself that you're doing a good job, because the truth is, no matter, how you slice it, even the people you get to come to treatment, the truth is we're going to lose more people than we save. So those saves are extra special. And just to be a part of somebody's journey, like, man, because I remember my family was done with me by the time I went to treatment. I mean, nobody visited me. Nobody brought me. I had no clothes. I'd been in jail for 2 months. Last time I went to treatment, I'd been in jail for 2 months. This charity place had to bring me clothes. Like, I had nothing. And the recovery staff there were my family. And I will never forget those people. And just being that just a small piece of their journey is such a huge thing. And when you were talking a minute ago, what it made me think about is a lot of times people call in, like I said, that for whatever reason, they're not able to come to us. They're not able to physically leave their county, or they don't have insurance or whatever. Or they say, hey, I've got Medicaid, and for whatever reason, we're not able to refer them or whatever. But my philosophy is one day that person might have insurance. One day that person might be off probation, and where do you think they're going to go then? They're going to call back the one person who was kind to them.
You were planting seeds.
Yes, and sometimes families call in and they want the person to get help, and that person refuses. And I always would get on the phone with them and first of all, I'm in recovery. Second of all, I don't work for commission. My paycheck's not based on whether you come to treatment or not. Let's just talk this shit out. Wow. Addict to addict, let's talk this shit out. And that gets people to kind of put that guard down and just have that conversation. They may not go to treatment then, but when they get ready to put down a little bit of that pride and be like, okay, maybe I do need some help with this, sometimes they think of that person who was kind to them and non-judgmental. And even if they don't come to treatment, even if they don't call you back, you're still going to be a little bit of the reason that person finally got help. And that's all we can do, because I prayed a lot of those foxhole prayers in jail. I was in lockdown for 4 days one time because I stole an extra ice cream sandwich. I was like, hey, so-and-so didn't get one.
Savage.
And so I literally was in lockdown for 4 days for that. And man, I was angry. But I did all this praying while I was in there, and I was reading my recovery Bible. It's the only thing they let me take over there. And I did all this reading, and I was like, man, God, if you ever get me out of this, I will make you so happy. I'll never do it
I hope
again.
your freezer has like 50 ice cream sandwiches.
It does, man.
Reward yourself, baby. Reward
If
yourself.
I get out of here, I'm going to have ice cream sandwiches whenever.
Oh, my God.
I'm getting a chest freezer.
You will never see
Let's
as
go to
many-
Sam's.
The food, like restaurant ads and commercials, you'll never see as many as you do while you're in jail. And I was like, if I ever get out of here, I will never not have a pillow again. I will never not have a supply of chocolate. But that's exactly what I have now. That's what I have now. And I gained so much weight in recovery, that recovery fluff,
Absolutely.
because I ate all the ice cream sandwiches.
Hell yeah, you
but-
did. You
Feelings.
earned it.
Hell yeah.
All right, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
All right, so as we all know, and Recovery Lab supports all paths to long-term sobriety, whatever that looks like for you. What do you do when someone calls in and they said, I tried Alcoholics Anonymous 5 years ago and that shit didn't work for me. I need help, but I ain't going to no goddamn Alcoholics Anonymous. What do you tell that person?
Man. So here's this game that addicts and alcoholics like to play. I don't know if you guys ever played it, but
I'm sure yes, probably.
The answer is yes.
It's probably been played.
man, so it's so weird. It makes no sense, but then most shit doesn't in addiction. But people call in and they say, I'm about to lose my job. My wife just left me. My kids hate me. I need help. And then as soon as you say, hey, I take your insurance, we've got a bed available. As soon as you give them a solution, they start backing out.
Yep.
Well, I can come in next month, or I have to be home for Thanksgiving, or I have to, this, that, and the other, whatever. Or on the other hand, like you just said, well, I've been to treatment 15 times. I've been going to AA for 15 years. What I would say to that person, what my kind of go-to line was, if you were not reachable and teachable, you could have gone 100 times and you've never been to treatment. Period. This might be, if you go in with an open heart and just shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down and listen to somebody, you're asking for help and you won't accept it. That's your problem. Getting help, they say, well, the first step is admitting you need help. The first step has quite a few, subcategories though. Knowing that you need help is one thing. Admitting that you need help, that's another
That's
thing.
right.
Asking for help, that's another thing. But then accepting the help, that's where people really get fucked up. And a lot of people go to treatment despite the fact that they have no intention of listening or, whatever. But I always just tell people, if you went to treatment and you didn't believe you needed to be there, you didn't think that anybody knew anything, you weren't listening, you weren't reachable, you weren't teachable, you didn't sit the fuck down and listen for a minute, you've never been to treatment. And I always tell people, the biggest thing about treatment, the treatment is going to treatment. The act of going to treatment, the act of taking time off from your job, stopping everything.
I never thought about that. That's great. That's fantastic. What a life lesson it is just in going.
Right.
Because you have to physically stop everything and make a it's an intentional act of putting myself first, which is addicts and alcoholics. We hate ourselves.
I'll tell you the irony. Now that my life is robust, I have a good job, have a family, have responsibilities and people that count on me. If somebody came to me and said, listen, I need you to go somewhere for 30 days where your food's going to be fixed. You're going to get to go to bed early. Nobody,
No
Sign
bath
me
time.
up.
No
I'm
bath
ready.
time. Yeah.
Like,
Look.
I need that.
just tell me if I can have my nicotine pouches. If my bag's half packed.
But when we're out there in the trap house with no heater going, set my account. Nah, I got something else I got to take care of.
Oh,
I don't know if this
man.
week's
I
going
got
to be
this
good.
come up next week.
Got a very important meeting
Everybody
with
getting their checks
with
come
the
around
investors.
The first?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
For sure. I'm going to tell you some of the most common obstacles that I hear about.
Oh, I
going
bet
to
this is going to
treatment.
be good.
Please.
So, and this is, let me just start off by saying my personal belief is that you don't need a cell phone in treatment. That's an addiction.
Yeah.
We're all addicted. We doom scroll, I mean, that's every person. But,
Not on TikTok anymore.
a lot of places nowadays, they allow you to have your cell phone because
wild.
people will come to treatment. But
Let me interrupt you to tell this. Daniel and I toured Defining Wellness, and I hope you don't work for Defining Wellness. But the guy got butt hurt when I was like, you can have a phone day one in here? Like, how do you keep guys from looking at things they shouldn't be? Where's John? He's in the closet somewhere.
Yeah.
Or, I saw he was about by the fence. That's crazy.
Hey, I don't like people playing on
I don't like people playing.
I'm
Keep
gonna
it
keep it
real.
absolutely no,
How-
that's
that is the most. I mean, Defining Wellness. To their credit, they have a lot of new age things. Like look at this red light, and it'll fix your feelings. And here's a chair that'll rub you and massage you, and lavender essential oils and whatnot. Look, I'm all for it. Whatever, if it works, I'm happy. But it is a stark contrast to the treatment I've been to.
100%.
So if having phones in treatment is going to be I don't think that hypothesis is going to find support.
No, and that is absolutely like that hits on the big things. And people, addicts and alcoholics like to have control, and that's one of the biggest things. When I tell you, like, listen, you're not going to have your phone, and you just panic. This panic comes up because that's that plan B. Because here's the thing: when you go to treatment, you're going to have those oh shit panic moments. There's a great big giant fuck it button in front of us, and that's what we've been hitting for the last 10 years or whatever. You're going to have those panic moments. You're going to have that moment when your roommate does something or your therapist says something, and you're going to want to walk out 10,000 times. But if I've got a cell phone in my pocket, I can make a call and have somebody come and get me. So I've got a little accomplice in my back pocket that's going to help me go through with my stupid ass plan. Snap decisions. We make those permanent decisions off those temporary feelings. That's just. So a lot of people, that's the biggest thing. Well, I can't come if I can't have my phone, and I mean, my biggest thing is, listen, oh, this is my favorite. So how long ago, like say it's September, how long ago was Christmas? You know what I'm saying? It's been 9 months. It feels like yesterday. Like it's basically Christmas now. We've got 3 months. It's been 9 months. And I'm like, that 30 days is going to go by so fast. Your head's going to spin. You're not going to miss that phone. If you're there for the right reason, you're doing the right things, you're paying attention, you're working on yourself, you're not going to miss that damn phone. But I just always tell people the phone it's an addiction. It is, it's something that you need to learn while you're there, that you don't have to have that, because that's exactly what taking pills is. That's exactly what drinking is, escaping anything but dealing with reality. And being here in this moment right now, I can just kind of mindlessly scroll on this phone or make these phone calls and keep calling these toxic people. And a lot of people just don't see it that way. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to come if I can't have my phone. And I'm like, well, okay. Well, when you get ready to get help.
Well, look,
give me a
you can perform a very simple task to determine whether or not you're addicted to social media. Just delete the app off of your phone. Wait about 15 minutes, and then you're it's like your finger just instinctively goes to
go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I've deleted Facebook, and I only do Facebook. I mean, I don't care about TikTok. I can't dance. I'm not going to record any.
Wait, you can't dance?
I can't. It's a sad story. So every now and then I try to do this dopamine detox, and delete Facebook, and it's good.
Yeah,
it's good. But that first couple, like oh yeah, that's right. And it doesn't take long.
No.
They ought to make people watch The Social Dilemma on Facebook. Have y'all seen that?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I need to check it out.
Oh, it's as addictive as anything you can imagine.
It really is. Yeah.
You
Even the
just
way
don't
they lay it
realize
out,
it.
the way
Yeah.
they scroll, it's like slot machine activity. Yeah.
I was fortunate in the fact that when I got to treatment, I didn't have anybody to call, so it wouldn't have mattered if I had my cell phone. Everyone was like, "Fuck off, dude!"
I didn't
Like,
even have a cell phone.
Right.
Man. What you talking about?
Well, we are seeing that people coming to treatment now in different spots. I mean, you and I were talking the last time about going to Baptist Children's Village. I mean, we got drug in there and we were broken. We didn't have anything. And now people coming in with cars and cell phones and your jobs to get back. I mean, I think the bottom has definitely been raised. So, finding treatment that fits for people, meeting them kind of where they are is an art form. It is hard to do. I have seen some of the treatment centers, though, I think be a little over accommodating, kind of putting people on maybe some MAT when MAT is not necessarily the thing to go to immediately, or give them their cell phones. But one of the things that you and I talked about was we both shared the long-term vision of possibly opening up our own treatment center. And we talked about what that might look like on my end. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your vision might be if you ever have the opportunity to open your, what are some of the things you would cut out? What are some of these things you would add on? If you're interested.
damn fine question.
Definitely. And I've been to treatment in a couple of different places. I've worked for a couple of different places. And, I mean, the place that I worked for, we would lose patients a lot of times to this awful facility. It's beautiful on the outside, but it's a terrible program. And we would lose people because they could have their cell phone or because they just something dumb. So with all that kind of experience, I've been taking these mental notes of the things that actually work. Like I said, I think that you don't need your cell phone. That's the number one thing. Some of the things that I do think, you can go to these places who are faith-based, right? For a lot of people that works. I'm not knocking it, but for some people it's really dangerous because it's like you're telling them, you admit it, that you've got this thing going on and you can kind of like pray it away. And then when you relapse or something fails, you give up on your higher power, you give up on everything. But that's kind of like their primary focus. Then you can go to the places that are more mental health focused. They don't offer AA. They don't offer, whatever. What I think is the variety. You've got to be able to set this person up with something they can take home. AA is a beautiful program. It works. It's a proven, method. You don't have to, believe in any certain thing or whatever. I think that it's important to have people going to AA meetings because it keeps you socialized. It gives you a purpose. It's free. It's everywhere. It's online. It's in person. It's whatever. I think it's important to have the mental health therapy, the trauma-based therapy, getting to the bottom of some of those things while you're there. It is important to offer medication. There are places that don't do medication, period. They won't even give you
that's so
they won't even
risky,
give you a,
man.
an antidepressant.
Watch out, bro.
Oh.
Man,
Yeah.
there's places that don't really do detox. You get there and they're just like, here's a Tylenol, hope you get better. I do think that detox is very important. Some people want to come in and, now those places where you can go and they put you in a coma for 3 days and you get to sleep through your opiate withdrawal. No, let me tell you something. Going through opiate withdrawals in jail while you're kicking and sweating on a concrete cell floor and praying for your life, you will never forget that. That's part of the things that I think about nowadays. But I do think that having a good detox program it's just so beneficial. Here's another thing that's beneficial. Having everything all together. There's some places you can go that they'll send you out to another place for detox. Then you come in and you do your treatment program. You finish up that 3 weeks or whatever there on the main campus. And then they have where you're having to go off campus to do AA, it's all disconnected. And that continuity of care is the most important thing. It from the minute I pick up the phone as the admission coordinator, I know what I'm talking about when I talk about my facility. And I say, hey, when you get there, this is who's going to meet you at the door. When this person picks you up, that's who the driver's going to be. They're going to take you in. This is who you're going to meet. And when they get there, they meet that person. It's like, she told me the truth. Wow. Then they get there and they go and they do detox on site, and then they transfer down the walkway. And it's just that same, it just creates that, I don't know, man. It just, to me, I've seen a lot better results than having to do it all over the place. So that's important. Another big thing is the aftercare, because, being in treatment, that first 30 days is a drop in the bucket, and it's, you're in crisis and you're going through detox. You feel like shit. Most people that come in are malnourished. You just got all these different things, the acute problems going on. And then when you get out, that's where the real test begins. When you go home, it's pretty easy to stay sober in a place where there's no alcohol, no drugs, no drug dealers, and no, whatever. But that aftercare, man, whether it's going to be IOP or PHP or sober living, that's so important. It makes a difference. It is the difference between success. It is a difference between success and failure. And this is kind of one thing that I've seen. If you find a place that offers all that, it's a good place. Because there's a lot of places out there, and I'm going to fucking say it because it's the truth. They're betting on you relapsing and coming back. They offer you that 30 days of, bullshit care, great. Here you go. Hope you do well. We're not going to give you a place, get your prescription set up where you can stay on this medication, because guess what? We know you're going to relapse and you're going to come back. So if they offer all those things to you and that follow-up care, and they have a case management team, and they help you with your court dates and making sure that you have certificates of completion, and they set you up for success. And that is just one of the biggest things. People go home and you're just right back in the middle of Shitville, and you're in the same place with the same people doing the same shit. You're going to relapse. And unfortunately, if you did go to treatment, you're going to think, man, that shit didn't help. If people come in and they have a really bad experience, it just sheds that really dark light on getting help. And it's, you're just right back in the cycle of things. I just think that it's really important to have that person come in and feel like they're cared for. They're not just a number.
I've gotten to go to one of the faith-based places, and it's a unique experience. You're legit told, okay, that heroin and alcohol detox is rough on you. You need the Holy Ghost.
Yep.
After I sobered up, I went to the guy that ran the place, and I was like, let me tell you about this alcohol detox. I don't think you want somebody dying here.
Right?
No, you don't want that, boss. You don't want that.
And like I said, I think, it sets a lot of people up for failure. I know my first sponsor in treatment told me, just for right now, I need you to keep, God and your recovery separate. Because if things fall apart and, or something terrible happens, whatever, God forbid you relapse, whatever, that way you don't give up on both things at once. I just need you to keep it separate
that's a
for
good
just
point.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's just something that kind of helped me. I just know a lot of people who, go to the Celebrate Recovery or just a faith-based program, and you're kind of told that it's almost like, when you confess your sins and you're forgiven, and it's, and that's a true thing, like that, like you're forgiven for it and that's everlasting. But addiction is not like that.
Right.
And so then, when you do relapse, your first thought is, well, God failed me,
Didn't work.
or
Yeah.
what did I do wrong? Or like, maybe my whole life's a lie. Like, it sets people up for an even bigger fall than they had in the beginning. So the variety, having those
Well,
options of things they can do.
It's interesting how in the faith-based world, how they determine success and failure. So, since I had been to treatment a number of times in medical facilities, that promoted the 12 steps and things like that, I had a little different outlook. They look at it not like addiction, you didn't treat your addiction sufficiently. They say you made it too easy for the devil to tempt you. And I remember it was a different way of thinking about things, and how they look at success and failure in life is a lot different. The mere fact that you used drugs and alcohol isn't quite as bad as disobedience to the Lord. So, I don't know that I quite agree with that, but it's interesting how they have a separate set of ideals.
Yeah. And for some people it works, and that's fine.
Mhm.
Recovery looks different for everybody. There's just no two people are the same. There's no two people that have the same origin story to their to their, villain theme. But I want to share something with you guys because it made my recovery more difficult. Didn't even know it at the time. I was lucky enough to spend 11 months in my county hotel. I was in jail for almost a year. And during that time, so let me just step back to 2006. I had a baby that was born really sick. He was born with congestive heart failure, and he only lived for about 16 days. And that's not where my addiction began, but that's where it began. Like, that's where my fuck it mentality really started happening. Within 2.5 years of him dying is when I started, taking pain pills like crazy. But I mean, I was angry at God. I did believe in God. I wasn't an overly religious person, but I was just angry. How can this happen? But while I was in jail, of course, we had the little church ladies that would come in, and I loved them, and I had nothing against them until this one day, the lady was telling me that her husband, like, she married her dream guy, and she got pregnant, and it was just this, happily ever after story. And he got sick. He had a cold. He wasn't feeling good. Whatever, goes to the doctor, and he's got cancer. And within 2 weeks, he was dead. This was just a young, healthy. It was one of those things where it's out of the blue. She finds out she's pregnant. So she has this little girl, and it's her whole world, right? So they're from Senatobia, Mississippi. So this girl gets to be about 3 years old. They go to vacation down in Florida on the beach, and she looks away for a minute, and the kid goes missing. And it's crowded, summertime, people everywhere. And she's like, we were frantic. We were, looking in the water, looking on the beach, just like full panic mode. And they ended up finding her almost a mile down the beach with a couple from Senatobia, Mississippi. Wow. And she said, "Isn't that a miracle? Can you believe that? It's a miracle. God took care of her. God saved her." And I said, "You know what? Fuck you." and she had she let me cool off, and she came over to my bunk and she sat down with me, and I said, "By that logic, you're telling me that God chose to save your child and chose to let mine die." Now, that's where I started to kind of open up the lid on that and say, what is it exactly that I'm upset about? And I had to get my own understanding of that together. At this point, what I believe is that, God really doesn't meddle that much. I don't think that God performs miracles. He doesn't curse us. He doesn't say this one lives and this one dies. I just think he doesn't do any of that. You know what I mean? So that's where my understanding kind of got to a place of, and that's where I have to be in order to let go of that anger, is just understanding that God doesn't pick and choose.
Yeah.
God doesn't make bad things happen, and once I kind of came to that, got a little bit better and further in my recovery, and I stopped one day and I said, I'd been saying all those years, like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to my child? Why? And one day I woke up and I was like, why why not? Bad things happen, and would it have felt any better if it was my sister's baby? Would it be any better if it was the neighbor down the road? It wasn't a curse. It wasn't, it wasn't personal. I wasn't handpicked to be, tortured. But I just think that a lot of people go into recovery with that religious, like a religious notion, or you grew up in a hyper religious family and you're just like, you're damned to hell. There's nothing you can ever do. And that's so dangerous for people in their recovery, I think. Especially early recovery when you're so raw and you're like a sponge. It's like you ripped off this giant scab and you're this big sponge. You're going to absorb whatever's around you. And so that it really matters where you are during that time, because I tell people, like, your addiction, it's almost like a part of your body. It's like one of your legs. It's one of your body parts, and it gets amputated and it leaves a hole, and you're going to fill it with something, good or bad. You're going to fill it with something. So you've got to make sure that you have got something healthy to fill it with, because if you don't, and you go home and you don't fill it with anything, eventually that same pain and that same ache is going to come back, and you're going to reach back for the one thing that fills it up fast, quick, in a hurry, changes how you're feeling, and you're right back to square one. So, that's a whole can of worms you could open, and a whole debate. And I think people get caught up in the argument of it a lot, and just kind of forget down to the basics. Like, people are dying. People are struggling, people are hurting, and one thing with the faith-based program, sometimes they turn their nose up to people who, you know what I mean? There's a lot of opportunity. It's like the least Christian thing you could do is, so you're too dirty for us. You're too, you're not good enough to come here and be here in this program. And it just, man, addicts hate themselves more than anyone else in the world. And so when they get that rejection, that little bit of rejection from any direction, it's devastating. It can really be the difference between life and death.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to come on and participate in this podcast with these guys is because I could see that they were trying to form a safety net of all these different avenues to recovery, whether it was a church or a 12-step program or aftercare or trauma therapy or whatever. I see so much that there's normally everybody's kind of fractionalized or isolated in their own thing, and they want to wave a flag and say, we've got them. They say we don't have a monopoly, but they act like
They
got
pretend
a
they
freaking
do.
monopoly.
They act like you do.
Yeah,
Right.
and so it's like, let these things, people figure their way out. There's a reason on the back of all of our coins it says to thine own self be true. We got to figure out what works for us and what doesn't. I think it's kind of that's why I'm here, is that things will start to hopefully connect and give more safety net than fewer, and say this is how you've got to do it, because it just doesn't work for everybody. I've seen church work for some people. I've seen
Absolutely.
it work.
I've seen it work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well,
It does.
I'm sorry. I hate to wrap this up, but we are almost at the top of the hour. And
This was getting good, too.
Hold on.
You're good.
I don't want to get out of here without Drew being able to ask his final questions. Drew, take it away.
These are my two favorite questions.
Okay.
What do you do poorly in your recovery?
Man, so what I do poorly is reaching out for help. And I do reach out for help. But like I'll call people and I'm like, I'm not going to give them the full version of all my bullshit. I get into my head too much. And people can call me and say anything. Like I'm not going to judge. I will help you. You can call me at 3 a.m., whatever, on the side of the road, but I don't give myself that same grace. And I don't automatically assume that somebody's going to say, I don't give a fuck, call me. I automatically assume that people are going to be like, are you serious?
You're
Call me this shit again.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I do poorly, is I give people more grace than I give myself, I think.
Beautiful.
All right. What do you do well in your recovery?
I recover really fucking loudly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Oh,
proud of
That
it.
might be my favorite answer
Let's
yet.
get a rim
Yeah,
shot
that's
here.
it.
Yeah.
I hear
That
people
was good.
say, like, I recover out loud so
Yeah.
other people don't suffer in silence.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
that's where we are, man. We're in the dark and you just feel so alone and you feel like you're not worth a damn thing. And, I know people who have worked with me in an admission center. I knew one girl that never, ever told patients she was in recovery. Never. She's like, that part of my life is over with. I'm a new person. I'm a different person now. And I'm like,
Missed it.
Do you know the first time I ever told the truth and I ever opened up to a therapist was the first therapist that told me I lost a baby to SIDS. Because my defense up until then was always, you have no idea what the fuck I've been through. You have no idea who I am. So the first person that ever opened up, and I thought, man, well, shit, what's my defense now? She knows exactly where I've been. And so that is my mission, and that's what I always do, is I let that person know in some way within the first 5 minutes of that call is, I'm no better than you. I'm not talking to you from up here. I'm on my knees. I'm looking up at you like I'm right here with you. I got 7 years sober, but I'm still only one drink away. I'm one pill away from being right back in the pits of hell. So I'm not better than you. I'm just a little bit further along in my journey.
You hands down win the award for best answer
Yeah.
to what
Yep.
I do.
Do it
well.
out loud.
That's a high bar that you
was
just set.
great.
Might be the only recovery anybody sees. I
That's
love
right.
it. I love it.
You know,
Awesome.
if you do it silently, people don't have a model to look up to.
Amen.
You know, and they believe like there's no way out of this. There's no way to ever be a good person again. You know, not that you're a bad person now, but you think you are. And
Oh, it's so easy to feel like there's just no way out.
And that's what you guys started this for, is to do that, to do it out loud.
Yeah.
To do
and,
it
and
audibly.
everywhere in
Yeah.
society, that's what it's telling you. You're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You go into your doctor and you admit that you're an addict, you can come in with your finger chopped off. You're never getting another pain pill. Anytime you come in and say, I've got something wrong with me, I've got that red flag that pops up when I go to the ER now. My whole foot can be chopped off and they're going to be like, she's an addict.
Toradol.
You know, and I mean, so
Ice it.
once you tell the truth and you admit yourself out there, everybody, the message that you get, a lot of times the words that you get is you're a piece of shit. And so a lot of people, you know, they are in addiction in the dark in silence, and then some people recover in silence because they don't want that judgment. Man, the stigma's just got to go, man. It's just got to go. And I know we're running out of time, but my first admissions director, my first job, she said, listen, we are 911. She's like, you are the best recovery coach I have ever seen. But when these people call in, they've been shot in the head. They're bleeding out. They don't need to know how to get the blood out of the carpet. They need you to save their life. And if you treat every caller that calls in as in you're 911, they're bleeding to death, they are going to die. If I don't help them, you will help everybody in some kind of way. So that's my biggest, I'm proud of that, you know, that I carry that with me. And when I get to a point where I am not able to do that and I'm getting angry, irritated, fuck, that phone's ringing again. That's when I know I need to step back. That's when I know.
Have an ice cream sandwich.
That's when I need my ice cream sandwich
Call
and
your
my
sponsor.
coffee, and I need to, you know, watch one of those movies that, you know, brings it all out of you. But yeah,
Rudy.
this is because, you know, if a person calls in and they feel, you make them feel like that, they're never going to call out for help again, and they're just going to die alone.
Yep.
So.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. And if anybody on the internet that's listening to this wants to work with Amanda or hear more about her, hit us up on the Facebook page in the comments under this video, and we will link y'all up.
Absolutely.
Thank
Amanda,
you so much for
thank you
having
so
me.
much. What a great guest. You're rock. All right,
Thanks.
ladies and gentlemen, we will see you. Well, not next week. I'll be in Austin, but we'll see you the week after that. Take care.